Hello, Muslim friends in the world. Amidst the cold snow and political storms that rocked Russia, an archaeological discovery shook the world. 40 bodies of the Prophet Muhammad's companions were found intact, smelling of flowers, and hidden in Russian soil. This discovery not only changed the view of history, but also shook the hearts of the highest power in the Kremlin. President Vladimir Putin, who had always been known as an iron ruler, was suddenly caught in a vortex of spiritual mystery that shook his soul and forced him to face the truth that had been hidden for so long. What was actually found in Russian soil? Why did the fragrant smell coming from the tomb signal the revival of a forgotten history? And how could one decision from a world leader shake the global order? This is not just a historical story. This is the story of a spiritual revolution that shook the world, and perhaps will change human civilization forever. A cold wind crept through the crevices of the Caucasus Mountains, caressing the silent valley with a biting hiss. Snow covered the ground like a giant white shroud, hiding secrets buried for more than 1,000 years. Amidst the silence, the pounding of hammers and the sound of drills shattered the stillness. A Russian archaeological team led by Professor Yelena Mirova, a middle-aged woman with a cold and skeptical face, was digging through large stone ruins at the bottom of a narrow ravine. The site, according to an ancient map, had once been a trade route between Persia and Slavic lands. "This is just rubble," Yelena muttered, staring at the large stone wall before her. But one of the young assistants, Ivan, pointed out a strange crack in the big stone. Carefully, they pried it open. As the stone slowly fell away, a dark tunnel appeared. The tunnel gaped like the mouth of time. Without hesitation, Ivan switched on his flashlight and crawled inside. "This cave, it's huge," his voice trembled. But before he could finish his sentence, he stopped. Yelena and the others quickly followed, and as soon as they stepped inside, an unbelievable aroma greeted them. Fragrant flowers, roses, and musk, as if they had just entered a garden of paradise. "Impossible," Yelena whispered, covering her mouth and nose, her eyes wide. Inside the cave stretched a scene that left the whole team frozen. Dozens of human bodies, sleeping in perfect positions, their bodies intact, their faces peaceful and smiling. The bodies did not decay. There was no smell of death. Even the robes they wore remained intact, with colors not yet faded. Ivan nearly fell to his knees. "What is this? Who are they?" he whispered. Yelena stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on one of the bodies. On its chest hung an ancient metal medallion inscribed with Arabic letters she did not understand. But a team member with a military background immediately shouted, "That's Arabic calligraphy," says Muhammad Rasulullah. At that moment, silence turned into fear. One of the lamps fell and went out. The air inside the cave grew heavy, as if the space was inhabited not only by the living but also by spirits who had waited 1,000 years to be found. Some team members began to panic, wanting to leave, but Yelena stood frozen. In her heart, she knew this was not just an archaeological discovery. This was something far greater, older, more sacred. Unbeknownst to them, vibrations from the earth began to spread. Not an earthquake, but a deep spiritual echo. That day, deep within the Russian mountains, the veil of history began to lift, and the world would soon change forever. Night fell quickly over Moscow. The gray sky hung over the Kremlin, as if holding back something not yet ready to be revealed. Behind the legendary red stone walls, President Vladimir Putin sat alone in a secret underground meeting room, staring at the thick report just sent from the Caucasus Mountains archaeological team. Inside the report were photos of intact bodies, ancient clothing, and, most disturbing to his heart, ancient Arabic writing bearing the name of the Prophet Muhammad. Putin sighed deeply. He had seen much in his life, War, conspiracies, diplomacy, even religious propaganda. But this was not propaganda. This defies logical explanation, said General Sergei Petrov, head of military intelligence, standing near the table. Are those bodies ordinary humans? Putin asked without looking up. They did not decay, not damaged, and they smell fragrant, Petrov answered softly. We have sent a forensic team. Even DNA analysis shows they are over 1,400 years old. But their bodies are in the condition of someone who died just yesterday. Putin closed his eyes. In his youth, he was a cold intelligence agent who believed in nothing but power and information. But now, for some reason, his chest felt tight. Something stirred his soul, a feeling he could neither reject nor control. How many? Putin whispered. 40, Mr. President. 40 bodies. All men. Some have scars on their bodies. And, strangest of all, some hold scrolls of leather with Arabic writings we have yet to translate. Putin stood and walked to the window. From afar, the city lights of Moscow twinkled amidst the snow. He remembered his childhood when his grandmother secretly recited prayers and mentioned the name of Prophet Isa. He grew up in an atheist country, then became part of the machinery of power. But that night, behind the Kremlin's glass window, he felt small. There was a force far greater at work. Keep this from the public, he said coldly, but send envoys to Syria. Find a scholar who understands early Islamic history. I want their perspective. General Petrov nodded, though he looked hesitant. And if this is true, if they really are companions of the Prophet Muhammad? Putin said nothing. He only stared at the slowly falling snow outside. But in his silence, his heart trembled. If this is true, then not only Russia will change, the world itself will be turned upside down. At that moment, unknown to anyone, Vladimir Putin had just begun a journey that would shake the history of his own nation and open a new chapter in the search for truth that had long been hidden beneath ice and time. The sky over Damascus was shrouded in gray clouds as a Russian military plane quietly landed at a Middle Eastern military airport. Stepping off the plane, 3 Russian special agents escorted an elderly man with a white beard who walked calmly but with great authority. His name, Dr. Abdul Hadi al-Quraisi, a scholar and expert in classical Islamic history, renowned for his research on the early Islamic expansion during the era of the rightly guided caliphs. The President of Russia requests an explanation of something modern science cannot explain, said one of the agents respectfully. Dr. Abdul Hadi only smiled faintly. Sometimes, the oldest truths are the hardest to accept. The Kremlin meeting room fell silent again. Vladimir Putin sat directly facing Dr. Abdul Hadi. On the table lay photos of the discovered bodies. Documents, calligraphy, and medical notes were scattered, but the scholar's eyes were fixed only on one image, an old leather scroll inscribed with classical Arabic script. Slowly, Dr. Abdul Hadi began to read the text with a heavy, trembling voice. We are the messengers of the messenger, commanded to bring Islam to the cold lands. If we do not return, let the earth bear witness to our surrender on the path of Allah. Putin stared intently. When were they sent? According to historical manuscripts, a group of the Prophet's companions were sent northeast during the caliphate of Uthman ibn Affan. They were mujahideen and preachers, chosen for their strength of faith and steadfast souls. Their number, 40. The room seemed to freeze. 40. Putin repeated slowly. Yes, they are known in ancient texts as the Shab al-Jibal, the companions of the mountains. And they disappeared, never returned. No records of their deaths until now. Dr. Abdul Hadi then produced a manuscript from the Damascus library never before published in the Western world. A rare copy of Ibn Sa'ad's document describing a preaching mission far to the north, crossing Khorasan and Persia, toward lands covered in ice, yet the hearts within still burn, awaiting the light. Does this mean the bodies are companions of the Prophet? Putin asked, nearly whispering. Dr. Abdul Hadi nodded firmly. They are chosen men. Their bodies remain intact because Allah has preserved them. The fragrant scent is a sign of the glory of martyrdom or the purity of their mission. This is not legend, Mr. Putin. This is the truth embedded in your land for more than 1,000 years. Putin was silent for a long moment. His face revealed inner turmoil he could not hide. He was no longer just a head of state. That night, he was a man confronting divine history. If they truly were the Prophet's messengers, then this land, Russia, has been touched by the light of Islam for centuries. And now, said Dr. Abdul Hadi with a deep voice, that light has returned. That same night, Putin walked alone in the Kremlin corridor, where portraits of tsars and emblems of the old empire hung on the walls. But his thoughts were no longer on his nation's past. He began to ask himself, if Islam had once come here, then who buried it? And why does that light appear again now under my leadership? Those questions would take him deeper, not just into politics and history, but into a spiritual quest that would shake his very soul. Snow fell gently over the Caucasus Mountains, covering the tracks of military vehicles that had just passed. Behind the military tents standing over the discovery site, the entire security detail was on high alert. Yet no one knew that that night, President Vladimir Putin came unaccompanied by a visible escort. Wearing a dark leather jacket and a hood, accompanied only by a translator and Dr. Abdul Hadi, he walked slowly through a corridor dug toward the cave where the companions' bodies had been found. This place is very silent, Putin murmured as he stepped onto the cold, frozen ground. Because the sacred souls are guarding it, replied Dr. Abdul Hadi softly. Don't speak too loud, not out of fear, but out of respect. They entered the cave. As Putin's feet touched the clean stone floor, a fragrant aroma immediately enveloped him, like roses, musk, and spring air. Impossible. He knew no perfume or scent had been applied here. Before them, 40 bodies lay in perfect positions. Peaceful faces, as if merely sleeping. Not decayed, not dried out, only silence and a heavenly fragrance. Putin approached one of the bodies, still clutching a leather-sheathed sword. Hanging from its chest was a small metal calligraphy inscribed with La ilaha illallah, Mohammedur Rasulullah. Putin stared for a long time. His chest thundered with an unknown feeling. Tears welled up in his eyes. He turned to Dr. Abdul Hadi, standing calmly at the corner of the cave, and whispered with a trembling voice, "Why do I feel as if I'm coming home?" Dr. Abdul Hadi smiled faintly. Because the human Phaedra always recognizes the truth, even when the mind refuses to accept it. Putin knelt down. He placed his hand over the chest of one of the bodies. Instantly, warmth spread from his palm through his entire body. Surprised, he almost pulled his hand back, but a profound peace held him in place. Inside his mind, there was a voice. Not a human voice, but the whisper of a conscience he had never heard since childhood. The voice said, "The truth you have long sought. Now you have found it." Tears fell without resistance. In that silent room, Putin, the man known his whole life as a symbol of strength and power, bowed in silence, acknowledging his deepest vulnerability. Dr. Abdul Hadi stepped closer and respectfully said, "Mr. President, Allah shows his signs to whom he wills, but guidance comes only to those who open their hearts." Putin nodded, his voice hoarse from holding back emotion. "If this is the truth, then I have lived too long in darkness." That night, in the quiet Caucasus cave, history wrote itself anew, not with ink, but with the tears of a ruler returning to his human essence. And in the sky, the snowfall stopped, as if the earth itself held its breath to witness the dawn of a great transformation. The next morning, morning fog blanketed the small town of Derbent, Dagestan, a region on the shores of the Caspian Sea. Here stood one of Russia's oldest mosques, Juma Mosque, built in the 8th century, even before much of Europe had felt the light of Islam. But that day, the mosque was closed to the public. The entire area was secured by military personnel in civilian clothes. No journalists, no crowds, only a secret waiting to be unveiled. President Vladimir Putin arrived in disguise. Inside the cool, quiet old mosque, he was greeted by 3 Dagestani ulama and 2 Muslim historians. One of them, Sheikh Mohammed Zalalov, was a descendant of a line of scholars who had preserved classical Islamic manuscripts from Dagestan's golden age for generations. They sat in a small circle in the mosque's main hall. Sunlight filtered through intricately carved windows, casting arabesque patterns onto the worn carpet. Sheikh Mohammed opened a small wooden cabinet. From within, he carefully took out an ancient manuscript, written in black and gold ink. Putin leaned closer. "This is a record handed down through generations," Sheikh Mohammed explained. "Written by a Dagestani scholar named Imam Bahuddin al-Kawkazi in the 11th century. He wrote about the arrival of 40 holy men from Medina who came to this northern land bearing the call of Islam." Putin opened the first page. There, written in ancient Arabic, was, "And they came with radiant faces, bringing greetings from the messenger. They said this earth would be the last place for their dawah." Putin looked up, voice soft. "So, this isn't just an archaeological discovery. It's a forgotten part of Russia's history." "More than forgotten, Mr. President," replied a historian named Rashid Magomedov. "This history was deliberately buried. From the Tsarist era through the Soviet Union, all traces of Islam's earliest arrival in Russia were erased, so Muslims would have no roots." Putin fell silent. He touched the mosque's stone wall, feeling the chill of 1,000 years. Yet his heart felt warm. "All this time, I thought Islam came to Russia through war or modern migration. But the light came even before Russia was a nation." Sheikh Mohammed nodded. "Russia did not oppose Islam from the start. On the contrary, it once welcomed it." Putin's eyes reddened. He was not hearing a tale. He was witnessing the resurrection of his nation's soul, hidden by time and power. And as the adhan softly echoed from the mosque's ancient niche, without loudspeakers, without camera flashes, Putin remained motionless. The call pierced his heart. For the first time in his life, the adhan was not merely a summons to prayer. It was a call to his soul. After the adhan ended, Putin did not immediately leave. He remained seated, bowed in silence. And in his heart, Vladimir Putin whispered a single sentence, not out of pressure nor political calculation, but because of a light he could no longer ignore. "Ya Allah, show me the straight path." The news eventually leaked. Nobody knew exactly how, but photos of the Prophet's companions' bodies, still intact and fragrant, began circulating across the Muslim world's social media. Within hours, the hashtag Sahabat Nabi Diruja trended globally. Muslims from Indonesia, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, to Nigeria flooded the internet with cries of takbir and tears of awe. But for the leaders of the Western world and the Church, this was no cause for celebration. Rather, it was a warning alarm. Pope Alexander IX sat restlessly in his private chamber. Before him, a Jesuit cardinal read an intelligence report. According to our sources, President Putin visited the discovery site and held a secret meeting with several Islamic scholars. There is even evidence he touched one of the Prophet's companions' bodies. The Pope cleared his throat softly. And then, we strongly suspect that Putin is undergoing a spiritual crisis. There is a possibility. He is considering embracing Islam. The room fell into stunned silence. If that happens, the cardinal continued, we will not only lose a political ally, we will face a spiritual geopolitical shift unprecedented since the fall of the Byzantine Empire. The Pope clasped his hands. Russia is the last bulwark before Europe. If it falls eastward, the entire West could lose its foundational faith. In the White House basement, the CIA director convened a closed meeting with the National Intelligence Committee. The fact that these bodies remain incorruptible and emit a fragrant scent has sparked a massive revival among the global Muslim community. But what is more alarming? He pressed a remote, revealing satellite footage. Is Putin's reaction. He neither denies nor dismisses it, but seems to conceal something. An analyst added, underground Muslim forums are already spreading theories that Russia will become the center of an end-times Islamic revival. A Pentagon officer quietly asked, will we allow Russia to become a modern caliphate? Silence followed. Putin sat in his office, reading veiled threats from several European heads of state. The message was clear. Do not play with Islam. The Western world will not stand idle. But he was unafraid. He gazed out into the night, whispering to himself, they fear not the bodies. They fear the truth they have long buried, now rising from the grave. In his hand, he held an anonymously delivered paper, a prayer by Imam Hassan al-Basri about the courage of a leader who finds truth at life's end. That night, for the first time, Vladimir Putin performed Tahajjud prayer in secret. Not for politics, nor for image, but because his soul could no longer turn away from the light it had long rejected. Across the world, the Vatican, Israel, and Washington began plotting secret operations. They could not allow the world to see what had truly been discovered in Russia. A new war was about to begin. Not a war of weapons, but a war over the narrative of history and spiritual truth. Moscow appeared calm on the surface, but beneath the glittering city lights, winds of betrayal began to blow. In a lavish villa outside the city, a group of generals, oligarchs, and senior intelligence agents gathered in a dark meeting. They were not discussing the war in Ukraine, oil, or geopolitics. They were discussing Putin. He has changed, said General Rogov, a former Putin loyalist now uneasy. Since the discovery of those bodies, he talks more about Islam, the meaning of life, the hereafter. This is no longer the Putin we knew. A white-haired oligarch added, the world is watching. If he truly converts to Islam and influences our foreign policy, sanctions won't just be economic, they'll be total isolation. And Russia could fall. We cannot wait for him to make a public announcement. We must act. Now, whispered a chief intelligence officer. They dared not kill Putin openly, but they had another plan. A silent coup through forced resignation, media sabotage, and engineered internal crises that would force the people to demand his removal. And it would begin in 7 days. Putin sensed something was wrong. His guards were being replaced. His old advisors vanished one by one. His phone was tapped. Even his own assistant began acting strangely. But he was not afraid. In his private room, he called Dr. Abdul Hadi, the only person he now fully trusted. I know they are planning something. I can feel it. But I don't care. I fear losing this light more than losing the throne. Dr. Abdul Hadi looked at him. If you are ready, then don't wait too long. Announce the truth before they silence you. Putin nodded slowly. I will speak to the world. Live broadcast. From the place they fear most, Juma Mosque in Derbent. The CIA received reports that Putin had prepared a major speech to be broadcast soon. The Vatican immediately sent a secret message to Moscow. Stop him, or we will stop him for you." They did not want the world to know that 40 bodies of the companions of the Prophet were found in Russia. They did not want the leader of the world's greatest nuclear power to openly convert to Islam. They understood that one more step, and the world would change forever. Under the cloudy skies of Moscow, an unmarked military helicopter transported special forces toward the Kremlin. At the same time, news broadcasts were disrupted, the power grid was cut off, and the Kremlin's social media accounts were deactivated. They thought Putin was asleep. They were wrong. When the coup forces stormed the office, they only found a scrap of paper and an empty prayer mat. On it was written, "I do not fear humans. I only fear God, the owner of the heavens and the earth." Dawn covered the city of Derbent. From the old tower of Juma Mosque, the call to prayer echoed, calm yet piercing the depths of the soul. No one expected that morning that world history would change forever. The national Russian broadcast, which had been controlled by the coup, was suddenly hacked. All television channels, Russian YouTube channels, and even international platforms like CNN and Al Jazeera were flooded with the same broadcast. The screen showed Vladimir Putin standing inside Juma Mosque. Behind him stood several Dagestani scholars and guardians of ancient manuscripts. He looked calm, wearing a simple dark blue robe, without national symbols, without military guards. He stared into the camera. "To the people of Russia and the whole world, today I speak not as a president, but as a human being, as a soul seeking the truth." He sighed, then continued, "A few weeks ago we found 40 bodies of the companions of Prophet Muhammad in northern Russia. Their bodies are still intact, their faces glowing, their scent more fragrant than any flower on earth. They do not decay, because they are the people promised paradise. I touched their hands, I smelled the scent of heaven from their bodies, and I realized that all this time we have been blinded by propaganda, by twisted history, by powers that hate Islam because it brings light." Putin held a small Quran in his hands. "I read the Quran, and I cried. I found a peace that I never found in power, in politics, in ideology. I found the true truth. Today, I, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, with full awareness and humility, pronounced the two testimonies of faith." He bowed his head. "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." Silence followed, then tears. Shouts of takbir from thousands of Russian Muslims watching outside the mosque. Across the world, millions of Muslims cried before their screens. In Gaza, Istanbul, Jakarta, Kabul, Nigeria, the takbir echoed. Islam is not the enemy. Islam is light, and from today, Russia will no longer oppose that light. Within 24 hours, 20 million Russian Muslims cried in prostration of gratitude. Hundreds of Russian Orthodox priests declared their conversion to Islam. The coup generals fled abroad. The presidents of Turkey and Iran sent congratulations. Thousands of non-Muslims in Europe began learning about Islam. The Vatican expressed deep concern. Washington called Putin's declaration a dangerous spiritual anomaly. But Muslims did not care. For them, this was a new dawn. 3 months later, mosques were built across Russia. Ancient Islamic manuscripts in Dagestan were opened to the public. At the site where the 40 companions' bodies were found, the Islamic Light Complex, the largest spiritual pilgrimage site in Europe, was established. And Vladimir Putin, he no longer lived in the Kremlin. He lived in a small house in Kazan near a mosque. He taught children to read the Quran and occasionally helped clean the ablution area. Someone asked him, "Do you regret leaving power?" Putin smiled, then answered, "I used to lead Russia. Now I am led by Allah."